I don't know what moves faster, the gas gauge or the clock. And you can actually get 4 people in the front of this thing. It's 4 inches wider than the standard Chrysler. Welcome to another episode of Jay Leno's Garage. If this episode seems a bit different, it's because we're working under the current circumstances. I'm here by myself. I put the camera on the tripod. I talk to you. Then I run out of the shot and I move the camera to the next shot. So I hope you'll bear with us until all this is over. The car we're featuring today, 1957 Imperial. This was a breakthrough car for Chrysler. This car is interesting. It falls into my favorite category of original and unrestored. All the chrome, the paint, all original to the car. It has not been redone. What we did redo on this car was only to make it roadworthy. I put a stainless steel exhaust system in it because the original system had rotted out. We did wheel cylinders, brake hoses, brake lining, water pump, serviced the air conditioner. And the interior had just cracked, well, beyond reason. You know, the material becomes threadbare, and there's only 40,000 miles on this car. It's a fascinating story. Original and unrestored. Old lady had it. She drove it for just a few years, traded it at the dealership. The dealer, for some reason, was taken by the car, and he just stored it in a warehouse for a number of years. And he sold it to a guy who then stored it for a number of years, who sold it to my friend Wade Travis, who contacted me. The reason this car is unique is because these all rusted out. There was no galvanized steel on automobiles in the 50s. The rain gutters on these things right here, well, these would get clogged up with dirt or leaves or whatever. So kind of when rain would accumulate, it would rust through. And these cars literally lasted 3 or 4 years before they began to rust out. Plus, this was a brand new body style. Chrysler was turning over body styles every 2 or 3 years, so the build quality was not the best. It was good, but not the best. And so consequently, not many of these lasted, especially 2 doors like this one. That's what makes this car really, really interesting. It drives like a brand new car and handles like a brand new car. The engine is a 392 cubic inch Hemi engine, putting out about 325 horsepower. This is the engine everybody wanted in the 60s and 70s. The legendary last year of the Hemi, 57 and 58, were the last 2 years of this big motor before they switched to the 413. But this is the one hot rodders loved. You can bore them out and get 2,500 horsepower out of these if you wanted to. So it made for a pretty fast automobile. This car is an Imperial, not a Chrysler Imperial, an Imperial, because the Imperial name goes back to about 1926. It was always the Chrysler Imperial. But then in 1955, Chrysler decided they wanted to compete more competitively with Lincoln and Cadillac. So they decided to make Imperial a separate manufacturing facility, a separate name brand. And they had to do that in all, what was then 48 states, and put it in as a company, Imperial. This shares no sheet metal or anything with the other Chrysler products of the 50s. Brake drums, all of that is different. Bigger, thicker, heavier, massive chassis. As the other Chrysler cars are going to unibody construction, this remained a body on frame until about, I think, 1966, had a massive chassis. I'm going to put it up on the lift later and we'll show you the chassis. In fact, these were so well built. Now, I know I'm contradicting myself when I said build quality, but that had more to do with rust proofing and everything like that. These were so massively overbuilt, so strong, that these cars were banned from demolition derbies because they felt it gave the driver an unfair advantage. People could crash into it all day, and you couldn't move that X frame, because it was so strong. We'll put it up in the lift, and you'll see the drive shaft runs through the frame. In fact, the emergency brake does not grab the brake drum, it grabs the drive shaft. Little Chrysler history. Walter Chrysler was one of those engineering genius kind of guys, you know, kind of like Steve Jobs and one of those types with the electronic industry. And he took over Maxwell and became Chrysler. Very innovative cars. And in 1934, he came out with a car called the Chrysler Airflow. Now, the Imperials were prestige automobiles in the late 20s and 30s. That's always been the top of the line Chrysler, the Imperial. But the Airflow was more streamlined. It looked like one of those Santa Fe Express or one of those trains, you know, that you saw back in the day, very Art Deco. And a huge bomb, did not sell at all. Well-built car, innovative car, all steel body. I mean, they even did a video where one rolled down a hill and then the guy drove away in it because it didn't crush the roof. You know, most cars at that point had a lot of wood and everything in them. But the fact that the styling was too much ahead of its time, you can't sell something before people are ready for it. So they got pretty burned and became extremely conservative after that. In the 50s, K.T. Keller, I think his name was, he was the president of Chrysler. I'll give you an example. He didn't want to drive any car that a man couldn't wear his hat in while driving. You know, your hat didn't hit the roof. So Chrysler's from the late 40s and 50s, very high roof. And you know, that old adage, you can sell an old man a young man's car, you can't sell a young man an old man's car. And Chrysler's look sort of stodgy and very well engineered, very well made, but not exciting automobiles. Then Virgil Exner went to work for Chrysler, and this is what forward look. This was, I remember the big ad campaign. I was 7 years old in 1957 was suddenly it's 1960, dun, 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 dun. And this was considered to be 3 years ahead of its time. The fascinating part about this styling of this particular car was it was the only car where an average-sized guy like myself could see the roof, because most cars were up here at this point. So this is low slung, had 14-inch tires instead of 15, so it sat lower. It looked like a spaceship. And this was the most successful year for Imperial. They sold 36,000. They didn't catch up to Cadillac, which sold 120,000, but they just beat Lincoln by a handful of cars, which was a huge, huge get for them. So that was considered just unbelievable. So the styling remained pretty close to this for the next couple of years, changed the grille and a few things. But this was considered one of the most beautiful cars of the period. Just a lot of styling touches in it. This Landau bar here, this piece of chrome that goes over the top. You know, when I was a teenager, I was infatuated with Road and Track and Car and Driver magazine. So consequently, these big old land barges didn't interest me at all. I just thought they were the ugliest cars ever. But as I get older, and I don't know, there's just something about them. Now I really like it. It brings me back to my childhood. When I was a kid, my uncle belonged to a country club in New Rochelle, New York called the Green Tree Country Club. And he would always take me there. And I would stand in the parking lot, and these would come in, you know, guys would come in with the Marlboros in the sleeve and the cigarettes and the whole deal. And, you know, and there were these kind of greens and blues and aquamarines and all those colors from the 50s. And these cars just seemed so enormous because, well, they were enormous. I mean, I was 7 and they seemed enormous. Now I'm 70 and they still seem enormous. So it's pretty amazing. But this is a very well engineered, very well designed automobile. As I say, does not share anything with the standard Chrysler line. Brake drums, everything is massively overbuilt. Huge frame, as I stated before. That Hemi engine with a 4-barrel carburetor. This got 13.5 miles per gallon, which is considered pretty good back in the day. Actually, one of these won one of the mobile economy runs back in the 60s because it hit 20.1 miles per gallon, which was just unbelievable. I mean, the guy must have been driving barefoot with his big toe, but somehow they managed to do that. All kinds of little touches on this car. I mean, just look how massive this thing is. And as big as it is still shorter than the previous model in '56, but it is 4 inches wider. That's the thing. It's wider and it's lower. And that's, I always say on this show, longer, leaner, lower. Well, it's not leaner, but it's certainly longer and it's certainly lower. Let's open the hood and show you the Hemi engine. Again, this is a totally unrestored car. So under the hood's gonna look like, well, a 60-year-old automobile. We rebuilt the carburetor. As you can see, it looks awful clean there. Everything else is exactly as it would be. We reserviced the air conditioner, just charged it, and it's fine. We changed the oil in it and all, but it's fine. But look how big that Hemi engine is. The 413 that replaced it was a little more powerful and was 101 pounds lighter than this, but this was one of the great motors. It was an expensive motor for the company to manufacture, but pretty bulletproof and so under stress in this application, you could get all kinds of horsepower out of it. This, of course, would be the grandfather to the legendary 426 Hemi of the 60s. It's a little tight under here. You got your big air cleaner here. The oil bath oil cleaner was gone by this point. What's almost impossible to do is to check your brake fluid. Look at where the master cylinder is underneath there, the booster. Yeah, that was not a good engineering idea. But other than that, everything is pretty straightforward. It's got a modern battery in it, obviously, because I like to drive my cars. I like to use them. This still had the original tires on it when I got it, the old 3-stripe white walls, but they were too dangerous to drive on the street. I mean, it would roll and hold air, but you couldn't drive it. So obviously you put modern radial tires on it. You have to. And we put seat belts in the car as well. But that's an unmolested Hemi right there. We haven't had the heads off or anything of that nature. The engine's only got 41,000 miles on it. We change oil pretty, when I got it, we changed the oil, then I drove it a couple hundred miles, and we changed it again, then we changed it again. So now the oil is pretty good. It's not a lot of sludge or anything in there. But everything works, air conditioner, heater, defroster, 6-way power seats. This is what you call a loaded car. Electric windows. This was the top of the line for Imperial. There was only one of, this is the Southampton model. And then you had the Crown, and then you had the LeBaron, which was the really top of the line. It was about $1,000 more. But that's a fairly rare one. I'm not sure if that even came in a 2-door. But just listen to this massive hood when you shut it. Let's see. Well, I've magically appeared at the rear of the vehicle. I know this doesn't seem as smooth as what we normally do, but I want to make sure you guys get fresh content every week. We don't want to miss any weeks. We always want to have something new for you. So try to bear with us as we shoot these this way. Now, here we are, as I said, at the rear of the vehicle. This was a hugely popular item. I call it the toilet seat. They call it the spare tire carrier. It doesn't actually carry a spare tire. It's only for looks. But this is a $38 option. You could get the regular trunk if you wanted, or without it, or you could, well, most people opted for this. That was one of those huge deals. And you had what they call the swallow strainer taillights. They're meant to look like a jet engine and would have, used to have a thing there to keep birds from coming in. That's sort of what this looks like. The previous year, Chrysler had the gun sight taillight. It was up here at the top, but they integrated it into here. It's really a very futuristic looking car. It looks like the 50s. Don't forget, this is the era of Sputnik and the space race, so everything looks sort of jet age. And as I mentioned before, this was Chrysler's most successful, not Chrysler, Imperial's most successful year ever. They kind of dipped a little after this, but this was seen as just a breakthrough automobile. And let's show you how big the trunk is. I love this Imperial script here. Let's take a look at this. Massive trunk in there. Oh, and I got to show you this. This is the Imperial brochure. America's finest motor car. You see it opens up this way. I always like how tiny the people look. Look at that. Just hilariously large. Look at the guy. Look how little everybody looks in this thing. Everything anyone could want in a fine motor car. If it's not, if you don't want it if it's not on this car. And notice it's not photographs. They're all drawings and paintings. There used to be a man who did the GM ones, Art Fitzpatrick, who used to do these. for GM. You know, made the bonels and everything look just tremendously huge. All the features, the push-button transmission, we'll get into that. Dual headlights, I'll talk about that in a minute, because dual headlights were illegal in many states. This is my friend Wade, who I got the car from. When he would go to car shows, he would put this next to the car, and it kind of told the story of the old lady who bought it. And those are the original tires. They only made those for a few years. They made those between 61 and 65. So actually it's the second set of tires on the car, but these are the ones that were on it when I got it. This is what it looked like when he picked it up. It's always been, this color is, he says it's shell pink. I thought it was something beige, something sand beige. You know, they always come up with these titles. Shell pink, though, works for me. But this is what he would put next to the car when he showed it at the car show. Being a two-door, it's fairly rare, but look how big. I mean, I could sleep in this thing, because you always want to have, this is the days when you got an actual manual. This one is for a 58, but as opposed to what they give you now, everything says, gee, see your dealer, you just get that. This actually tells you how to fix stuff. And as I said, all these pieces are unique to the Imperial. Nothing else from Chrysler, with the exception of maybe a generator and a few other things, or a few engine parts will fit it. And of course you got a full-size spare and a jack as well. This is the original fabric for the trunk. I mean, normally these wear and tear from people throwing suitcases and tires and stuff, and I mean, it looks brand new. It looks brand new. And the chrome, look how nice the chrome is. I mean, this stuff, I know I grew up in New England, and these cars look beat up after just 2 years. My dad bought a 66 Ford 7-liter when I was a kid, and after 2 years, there was bubbles showing up in the paint and everything here from rust, from salt being thrown up from those roads. So we replaced the gas tank. I'll put this up on the lift later and show you what we did there, but come on, let's take a look at the interior of the car. Just the amount of chrome and detail. Just on this door, this is all chrome here. You got your electric window. This is kind of a cool feature. You see, you can store things in here, and it's the kind of things I don't think thieves would know that was there if they didn't know the car. So you could hide stuff in there if you wanted to. It says Imperial on the kick plates. You got electric seats, 6-way power seat, up, down, forward, backward. We found the original material and redid the interior as it would have been. It was just all cracked and the foam was dead. So we got new foam, and this is the material that would have been in the car when it was new. We even went so far as to stamp the Imperial logo as it was done into the center of the seat there. It looks like an Imperial margarine commercial, but I love this steering wheel. You see your thumb goes here. You sort of rest in there while you're driving, and just chrome everywhere in this car. Here's your transmission. There's neutral and start. That's drive, reverse, second, and first. Here's something which was not particularly successful. They so wanted to be the future. They so wanted to be different. You know, most cars, you have a stalk here, left to right. Pretty simple, up for right, down for whatever. This goes, that gives you turn signal that way. This gives you left. This gives you right. And then when you want to cancel it, you press it in the center. It was a little too confusing. The next year they made it a lever, go left to right. That didn't work. And then eventually they went back to the stock. I love the two big center gauges here. You know, if you need your glasses to see the speedometer, you shouldn't be driving. This thing is so massive, how big those letters are. You got a tripometer, odometer there. You got your clock, and you have all your other gauges here: gas, oil pressure, temperature, battery condition, charge. You've got your headlights here. This releases your emergency brake. This is your electric antenna. This is your blower for heating and air conditioning. Those are your wipers, your key start. Here is your, you know, heat, air conditioning, defrosting. Interesting radio. The first use of a transistor in a radio in an automobile was Chrysler back in that year. That's pretty cool. Again, trying to be different. This was not real successful. It's just awkward that the mirror is on the dashboard rather than up here. The idea you have this unobstructed view. But the cool thing is, this is the first year of curved glass. Notice you're not blinded by the A-pillar. This here is your A-pillar. You know, a lot of cars, modern cars, you do this because the A-pillar is so big, because if the car rolls over, it'll keep the roof from collapsing. So this one, the roof will collapse on you, but at least you'll be able to see it. You'll be able to see out. Massive glove box in this thing. Let me show you the front of the car. I'll show you what I mean about the quad headlights. Dual headlights were illegal in many states in 1957. Come on, I'll show you what I'm talking about. They call this the biplane bumper because it does look like a biplane, these two things here. The egg crate grill. I have a 58 convertible. It's a little bit different. I'll show you the front of that. That has this normal type bumper and a different grill, but basically it's the same car. One other thing we did with this car, I used a company called perfectionhail.com. I think that's the name of it. My friend Chris out of Lancaster, Texas. He's one of those guys, he comes with these rods that have balls on the end of them, and they can take dents out of cars. It's amazing. No hammers, they don't crack the paint, but you know, Texas gets a lot of hail, so he moved down there. He's from here originally. And he took all the little dings over the years that this thing accumulated. Nothing terrible, but just stuff you'd notice. And without damaging the paint, was able to, I can't even tell what the dents were. So here's his address if you want to contact him. I thought he did such a good job. If you're in Texas and you got a car with a few dents or some hail damage, give him a call. But anyway, look at this massive front end. And these bumpers were very expensive because they were curved, and so they only, this is a big, big chunk of chrome. You could buy this car today for what it costs to chrome these bumpers, but this is the original chrome, so that's pretty amazing. Right now I'm going to fire the car up. We'll take it across to the shop. I'll put it up on the lift, and I'll show you the massive frame on this thing. What we did, we added a new gas tank. The original gas tank, you know, if they're porous or they're dripping, don't bother cleaning it out. You know, gas tanks are available. So many companies make wonderful duplicates that are stronger and they're galvanized and they last forever. So that's what we did. And we put a stainless steel exhaust system on it as well. Come on, I'll take it next door and I'll show you. Okay, I've got the car up on our Sterlicone lifts, which is what we always use here at the shop. Things are really fantastic. You know, it's so eerily quiet because nobody's here. All the guys are taking it easy. They deserve a break, so that's good. Yeah, everybody gets paid, everybody gets full insurance, everybody gets medical. Don't worry about that. Okay. Okay, here's what we did to this car. We put a new gas tank in because had porosity problems and boiling it out. It was just never going to be perfectly clean. So we start with a clean sheet of paper. We put air shocks on here to help these leaf springs. It's hard to find anybody that can arc springs anymore. So the air shocks really work out well. We put a new stainless steel exhaust system. Here's that perimeter box frame deal that we talked about earlier. Look how massive this frame is on this thing. It's a pretty unbelievable. You can see why these were banned at demolition derbies. This is your emergency brake. This grabs the drive shaft rather than the rear brake as on most cars. Okay, you see this piece here gives more rigidity and then the drive shaft goes through it. There's your Hemi engine there, your crankcase. As you can see, it's got 70 years worth of wear, but look, no dents, no smashes. Nothing, the frame has not been hit, has not had to be straightened. Even in here, in these rocker panels, I mean, there's a bit of surface rust, but very clean because this car was kept in a garage. It was not even undercoated. So, and there's no need to be because it's pretty dry here in California. And I don't let my cars get wet. I don't take them out in the rain. So with the exception of the gas tank, exhaust system, and doing the interior, it's all pretty much original. As you see, we cleaned everything up here, greased the front end, lubed everything, did our front end alignment, original radiator, replaced the water pump. She's in good shape. I think it's time we put some GoPros on this thing and take it for a ride. I always love these old Chryslers. When I was born, my dad was driving a 49 Plymouth, and I was taken home from the hospital in that thing. I remember being, like 5 years old, and I would sit on my dad's lap and, get to steer the car, which was kind of cool. You could do that then. Now, of course, you see a kid sitting on somebody's lap driving a car, the man is immediately put in prison as a predator. The child was taken away. It's a whole big deal. But back then, it was fairly common. Then in 1957, we went to Crabtree Motors in New Rochelle, New York, and my dad bought a 57 Plymouth Belvedere, 4-door, 318. Had the big fins. It was black and white. I thought that thing was pretty cool. But it rusted out within 3 years. Like, there was literally a hole in the floor. I mean, it's amazing how good modern cars have become, but there's something about the cars from this era. You see, it's tricky. I don't know if it's because it made such an impression on me or the cars were impressive, but I guess it's a little bit of both. 1957 was really the year everything became, Thanks you guys. How you doing, buddy? Good.
It's a very beautiful car, though.
1957. Want to chip in for gas? Chrysler was the engineering company, and they had some real solid engineering. This has what they call a torsion air suspension. It's one of those names they make up, like Ultramatic, Cruisomatic, but there was some solid engineering behind it. This was probably the best riding of all the luxury cars of the 50s. The torsion air suspension had torsion bars in the front, leaf springs in the back. And the torsion bars would sort of twist to adjust the ride. It would kind of move the weight further back, I guess you'd say. And they handled pretty good. In fact, Tom McHale, he was the guy from Mechanics Illustrated, and he drove one of these and says, "This baby handles like a sports car," which is, I don't know what sports cars he was driving, but it made me laugh even back in the day. And you can actually get 4 people in the front of this thing. It's 4 inches wider than the standard Chrysler. The amount of chrome trim on this car is mind-boggling. But people seem to go nuts when they see it. This is sort of the perfect 50s color. This shell pink is what my friend Wade calls it as a color. I think it's like some kind of sand beige. They always have these dopey names. But it's power steering, power brake. It's the complete absence of road feel. You just sort of just float along. My mom always loved this kind of upholstery. Ooh, so luxurious. Rich brocade, they always use stuff like that. It's kind of expressions. You put a set of radial tires on it like I did, and it actually handles pretty good. It's not bad at all. And I love this panoramic windshield with the curved glass. It really is nice to be able to see right there. Modern cars, you're doing this all the time, looking around. Just trying to get past that A-pillar, that blind spot. Put your foot in it and it goes. It's pretty quick. It's not as fast as the Lincoln. The Lincoln was the fastest car of this period. I don't know why I'm all of a sudden attracted to these big behemoths. Probably because I'm turning into a big behemoth. You get older and you go, oh, this is a comfortable car. I can fit in it. It's got a lot of room. Next thing you know, I'm going to be turning the thermostat down and complaining. This is my dad's idea of a car. That's not one of those foreign jobs, nothing but problems. Get you a nice American-made Cadillac, Lincoln, Imperial. Imperial was only a mark for, I think, a few years. I think they went back to being Chrysler Imperial again soon after that. But for a short time in the 50s, they really worked hard to establish the brand. I'm sorry I have no camera car to film us. We're just sort of out here on our own by myself. Just stick the camera. It's kind of nice being at the garage by myself. It's always so crowded. There's always people there, the film crew and the regular guys and everything. Get some solitude. It's not bad. Up close you see, you can see a few little things in the paint, a couple of blemishes. Not terrible. But at night, oh man, this thing looks like a new car. You know, it just makes me smile. I don't know what it is. You know, it brings back, you know, when we have the big Sunday Italian dinner, you know, the driver would be filled with these giant Lincolns and Cadillacs. And I always tell the story of Mario the carpenter, my dad's carpenter friend. Mario was I think I mentioned this once before in a video we did about the Oldsmobile 98. Mario had an Oldsmobile 98 convertible, big tank, and he was one of those Italian guys, you know, had the slick back hair, the Marlboros rolled up here, you know, very good-looking, handsome guy, big muscles. You know. And I guess my mother thought Mario was handsome. I heard her just say to once in passing, "Ooh, all the women swoon whenever Mario goes by," you know. And I'm like 6, 7 years old. And we're having Sunday dinner, and my dad invites Mario to Sunday dinner. So all the big Italian family sitting there, and Mario's sitting there again in his T-shirt with the Marlboros. I look at Mario, and they look at the women. They look at Mario, look at the women. My mother goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "Well, Ma, you said the women all swoon when Mario comes by. I didn't see him swooning." Well, my mother, "Whoa, my God, whoa!" She's so embarrassed, runs to the bathroom, locks it down. Mario's sitting there like, you know, I mean, it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. Yeah, I was pretty much stuck at the children's table after that, yeah. I like any car more in a 2-door configuration than a 4-door. I mean, the 4-door is probably more practical for something like this, but it's more sporty with the 2-door. You know, old cars sometimes get a bad rap because you figure you probably lose 5% every couple of years until eventually it just doesn't drive like it should anymore. Like when I got this, it looked pretty much like it does now. Plus we cleaned up the paint and everything else. But the seats were completely collapsed. The foam was just dead. There was just no foam left at all in it. So it rides kind of hard. But you know, when we track down this original material, we track down the original foam, we put it back the way it should be, and it's really comfortable. It's not bad at all. It's a nice driving car. I just have an affection for these big old tanks. Just something about them makes me smile. It's like having a pet elephant. It's big, it's cumbersome, but it's so friendly. You just fall in love with the thing. I think it's a pretty good analogy. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this trip in this 57 Imperial. I really enjoy these things. You know, it's one of those cars, you either get it or you don't. But I like all kinds of vehicles. And with all that's going on in the world, some big, dopey, friendly thing like this, it's just a lot of fun to drive. Hey, listen, take care of yourself. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks a lot.